What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. It is Monday. Appreciate you joining me once again. Hey, we crest 300 subscribers this weekend, now sitting at 310 subscribers. I really appreciate it. You know, I get all kinds of comments on this channel about, hey, look, I found your videos a while back. I really appreciate what you do. Just hearing your perspective or hearing a different perspective on this has, really got me motivated to get back on a taper. You know, I've had people tell me I've been in a place of, severe depression for the last several months. And then I found your channel and it's done this for me. It's done that for me. And guys, that's why I do this. And I really love getting those sort of comments, because that's all I want to do. That's all I want to do, is give people a blueprint on how to kind of find that strength that already exists inside of you. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I'm not lying to you. It's there. It's there, hidden amongst layers of aversion to being uncomfortable. So I'm going to talk about that here in a few minutes, what aversion to uncomfortability is. 9 days off of KRATOM at this point. The sleep is still not all there. I would say energy is, for the most part, returned. I would say my energy is maybe 85 to 90% at this point. Again, I'm one of those people that do all the right things. I eat really healthy. I drink a lot of water. I will take some vitamins. I exercise relentlessly. I do all of these things to kind of help, I think, reset that. But with that, it does take a little bit of time, depending on how much you were using, how long you've been using it, that sort of thing. Again, sleep is not all there yet. I'm still kind of having this thing where I can sleep on and off through most of the night, but before I actually drift off, I kind of have this thing where I'm just kind of uncomfortable a little bit. I have kind of this physical sensation of discomfort in my chest. It's almost like you kind of have to move, and it's just kind of hard to get still, sort of thing. And I will say I quit cold turkey in my T45s last year, and I had a really tough time sleeping for about 2 weeks. And then I remember after about that 2-week mark, I fell asleep. I was able to sleep through the whole night, and then from there it just got incrementally better in succession after that. So it's one of those things where once you get there, and once your body has fully healed physically and readjusted, then it kind of continues to trend upward for you. I'm not quite there yet. Only 9 days out. I will say within the next probably 2 or 3 days, I should start seeing some, having some nights where sleeping nice and soundly, not really having the chest discomfort and stuff like that anymore. I will keep you guys updated on that. So, I had something happen this past weekend that was kind of indicative of what can become a problem in terms of long-term recovery for people. Okay, so we talk about on here, we've talked about some about triggers that can happen, when you quit using, triggers that can happen that can draw you back into a life of using again. And we've talked a little bit about making sure that you go around and completely avoid those triggers, even if it's, somebody that is a drug dealer. In my case, somebody who took KRATOM. Even if I have to try my best to avoid every head shop in town, that's what I have to try to do, right? And I've done some of that this weekend. I've made sure that so I live kind of like in an outer suburb of my city of Greensboro. I'm in the southeast suburb, which is out in a golf course area called Forest Oaks. Well, Forest Oaks is a good probably 3 to 4 good miles out kind of into a rural expansion of outer Greensboro, right? And the closest thing we have is probably a mile and a half up the road. We have a nail place, for women. We have, there's a little pub up there. There's like an Elizabeth's Pizza, a Dollar General, a Mexican restaurant. And then about a half mile down the road, we've got a Food Lion, like a doctor's office, a pharmacy there, like another Italian restaurant. We don't have a lot within an earshot or within a stone's throw of where I actually live. So I don't have any head shops right around where I live. I would have to drive at least probably 10 minutes down the road to go to a head shop. But back when I was using Kratom, my wife and I would always drive across town to the Harris Teeter. And, we were using the excuse that Harris Teeter is a little more expensive, but they just have, better selection of meats, better selection of fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. I eat a lot of those things. We eat super healthy in my family. So we would kind of use that as an excuse to make it a full shopping experience. Plus a Harris Teeter had a Starbucks inside the store. So we would go in there and, but usually my Saturday shopping experience consisted of taking some sort of Kratom and then going shopping, and then drinking some coffee to potentiate it, and then walking around Harris Teeter feeling high as a kite, right? Like, oh, this is the most fun I've ever had shopping. Holy shit. Oh. And so obviously I'm not using Kratom anymore. So the last couple of weekends since I've been completely off of the Kratom, guess what? We haven't been going across town. We've been going a mile down the street to our local Food Lion. There are no head shops. There are no places to buy Kratom around there. And it's one of those things where that is absolutely a trigger for me, because when I would drive to Harris Teeter, I would pass 2-3 different places that were known head shops to me. And then the Harris Teeter itself had a little business park literally right across the street from it that had another head shop in it. So, going to Harris Teeter 15 minutes into central Greensboro was absolutely trigger after trigger after trigger. There's at least 4 triggers there for me, right? So I had to change that about my, agenda as far as the weekend goes. And I'm not going to lie to you, complete transparency here. The weekends are a little tougher. During the week, I'm busy already. I'm working every day. I'm pretty much tied down from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, just like clockwork, because that's the hours that I work. When I get home, by the time I get home, it's 5:30. I try to go and jog for a little bit. By the time I get back in and shower, it's already 6:30, 7 o'clock. My wife's almost finished with dinner by this point. So by this point, and then a couple of days throughout the week, let me back up. A couple of days throughout the week, I take my son to kickboxing. On those nights, we're not home until, 8 o'clock. And then I shower, and it's 8:30 by the time I shower or get finished showering. And then we eat, and then a couple of minutes after that, we're going to bed. So during the week, I find it is not nearly as much of a challenge. On the weekends, as a substance abuser, I've always had this mentality of, oh, the weekend's my time to chill. The weekend's my time to relax. Well, I've done good all week, right? I've done good all week. So, surely I can just splurge just a little bit on the weekend with a little something, and that's been a challenge. And so, yesterday on Sunday, so let me see if I can kind of give you a backstory here. So my wife is from Connecticut originally. She's up north, and her mother and father, for the first 8 years of our marriage, or 9 years of our marriage, lived in Connecticut. Well, my father-in-law passed away last year, leaving her mother there by herself in Connecticut with her childhood home. And my wife's older brother, my brother-in-law and sister, actually moved to Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is about an hour and a half away from where I live now, from up north. They used to live in New York City. So my wife's whole family are, they're Yankees. No offense, I love Yankees. I love my wife, but they're northern folks, a bunch of northern folks, right? So my brother-in-law and his wife moved down south. Obviously, my wife has been down south for most of her adult life, and then my father-in-law passed away last year, and shortly thereafter, his passing away, we have a baby. We have my son River, quite unexpectedly, right? So obviously my mother-in-law is like, why am I in Connecticut? You know, she, for the last year and a half, 2 years of my father-in-law's life, he was a Vietnam veteran. He was hit with Agent Orange when he was in the Vietnam War. He developed Parkinson's because of this. And so he started to develop some dementia. So basically his brain was shrinking. And so he started having a lot of trouble. And once he started to descend, once his health really started to descend, he went downhill pretty quickly. And so my mother-in-law was his primary caretaker, right? And she was actually named that and was actually paid some by the state to be his caretaker, because this guy had a Purple Heart, Vietnam veteran, Vietnam, a hero in Vietnam, basically. Well, he passed away last year, and my mother-in-law was like, well, I'm up here in Connecticut, and 2 out of my 3 children, plus their whole families, are all down south. So she elected to sell my wife's childhood home, and she has moved here to about 15 minutes away from where my wife and I live, right? So she's ecstatic. She gets to see her grandchildren now. She gets to be within an hour and a half of her family, and but she has boxes and televisions and all this other stuff up, at her house that need to be gone through. She needs to have stuff moved here and moved there and whatever and ever. So we ended up going over there yesterday, and again, this is the situation. As a substance abuser, I would have always, well, before we go over here, let me take some of this. It'd be cool to kind of have a lifted mood when you do this. She has a beautiful property that's about 1.5 acres. It's got some woods over there. There's a creek down at the bottom of the bank. This is absolutely a situation where my wife and I would have dosed on some Kratom before we went over there, right? And so we had planned to go over there yesterday and kind of help her, get something, get her television put up, get it mounted on her fireplace, and help her kind of go through some boxes and get some things put away, right? And my wife makes the comment, about probably 10 to 15 minutes before we go. She's like, sometimes I miss Kratom. Yeah. So if you're just happening up on my channel, some of you know I've talked about this before, but if you're just happening up on my channel, let me be clear. There are different levels. When we talk about addiction, we talk about people having an addictive disorder, disease. There are levels to this thing, right? My wife was one of those people that she liked Kratom and she would take Kratom, but she would never take more than literally just a couple of grams per day. She never really exceeded that, right? And she's a very successful person. She's at the top of her field in a sales environment. Homegirl makes really good money. She's a very driven person. So just let me just put it this way. She never had a problem with Kratom. She likes Kratom, and she liked the effects of Kratom and to take Kratom, but she was one of those people that just never developed like this big tolerance for it. So 9 days ago, when I took my very last dose of Kratom, and I asked her to, we had like maybe 10 Kratom capsules left in the bottle that I was taking out of, and I told her to throw those away. So she did. Put it this way, she slept fine that very first night after she threw the bottle away, right? Because she had not developed a tolerance for Kratom. She was one of those people that could kind of take it or leave it. She liked it, but she didn't have to have it. It was one of those things. She would take a couple of grams in the morning, and then in the evening, if she wanted to relax, she'd just have a glass of, 6%, like bubbly, fruity sort of wine or something. She'd drink something like that. Never more than a glass. She's one of those people that's just, she's very moderate. She's able to be very smart about it. So it never, she never developed a tolerance on it. And it was never, you hear me talk about a slippery slope on here, it was never a slippery slope for her, right? But listen, the first thing I said when she said that is, I looked at her and said, yeah, but I can't take that. Because if I take it, I might, it's part of that, it's part of that first step in AA and NA. You've accepted that you're powerless over your addiction. All right. And that's one of the biggest reasons that people continue to use. And for me, when it comes to something that is similar to an opiate, there's no need in me trying to control that. There's no need. I might control it for a little while. I might could even just start taking it a little bit on the weekends or something, and that might last me 6 months, a year. Could last me a year and a half, 2 years, but indefinitely, ultimately, what would happen is I would decide to take it on a Monday, because I went a little overboard on the weekend, and maybe I felt a little crappy on Monday, and then I would decide to dose on it on Monday. And then, eventually a month down the road, I'm not feeling as though I had this happen, or I'm not feeling that great today, so let me take some on Tuesday. Eventually it would find its way back into every waking moment of my life. And I know that, but it was tough. I had a couple of moments yesterday, when we first left and we got in the car and we were driving, there were 2 different ways I could have gone to go to my mother-in-law's new house. And I purposely chose the way that went nowhere near that head shop because I didn't want to be tempted, because I did have that moment. I had that addict mentality always persists, and it always comes back. And I did have that moment where I was like, bro, you hadn't used in 9 days, you're doing great. You're probably good. If you took it one time, that wouldn't affect anything in terms of you having physical withdrawal. I started having this, but I made sure that I took my mind out of that I started doing something else, and that I engaged in something else, or I engaged in a whole separate conversation, and that I didn't drive past the head shop to make sure that I didn't take any. And I didn't. And I went over there completely sober and helped out my mother-in-law, and she was very appreciative. And so that was kind of a win. That was a win for me this weekend. So anyway, listen, subscribe to the channel if you want to use this channel as your accountability mirror. And that's what I use it for, because this is a way that I can make sure that I'm staying on the path of the straight and narrow, because I'm not going to get on here and lie to you guys about using KRATOM again. I'm just not, and if I ever do that, and if I ever backslide and end up using it, I'll tell you about it on here. I'm absolutely going to tell you about it. 9 days clean right now, but a lot of people are using it for that. A lot of people are jumping on and saying, hey, I'm this clean, I'm this many days clean, or I'm starting to taper, or you've motivated me to start tapering again, keep up the good work. And I want you guys to really use it as that, okay? So I want to move on. I talked about this past Friday when I did my video, we talked about being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because as addicts, we've trained our brains to crave comfortability, and we kind of have an aversion to pain, right? Which causes complacency. What do I mean as an aversion to pain? Well, an aversion basically just means a strong dislike of. Okay, so if you have an aversion to pain, that means you've created and trained your brain to have a strong dislike for being uncomfortable or a strong dislike for being in pain, right? And one of the ways to get around this, and why am I talking to you about these things? You know, it seems like sometimes I'm just doing a motivational speech on here, and because it matters to your addict brain, to my addict brain. This is one of the most important aspects of mental health and perseverance that you will ever learn. I promise you. You have to purposely throw yourself into the fire of responsibility. You have to have the opposite of the victim mentality. Take accountability for things that happen in your life. Instead of being the victim, oh, well, this happened, this happened. Nah. Be accountable. Because a lot of the negative shit that is happening to you is what? It's self-inflicted, homie. You did it to yourself, so you got to rely on yourself to get yourself out of it. And as responsibility mounts, and as you meet those responsibilities, instead of using a substance to hide from the responsibilities, your opportunities will increase. As responsibility increases, I'm going to say that one again. As responsibility increases, in other words, you're doing more things. You're purposely putting yourself into the fire and taking on more responsibility in your life. As responsibility increases, so do opportunities for you to do bigger and better things. There is a way that you can go from mediocre to meteoric. It can happen. I'm telling you. And so let's find a way to break this down. Okay? And as we know, addict mentality and using, it's an issue of short-term gratification. It's an issue of immediate gratification. You want to feel good right now. You have trained your brain to only feel good, to not ever feel bad. So what happens is you end up using something to get this fake sense of euphoria, this fake sense of uplifted mood. And then you get to a point where you have to continue doing that. Because if you stop, something like an opiate that's similar to an opiate actually lowers your baseline of mood and dopamine. So if you're using on a regular basis, when you go to stop, your mood is not even as good as it was before you ever even started taking KRATOM 4 years earlier, or 5 years, or 6 years earlier, however long you've been taking it, right? So in effect, you are conditioning your brain to accept mediocrity and to accept only feeling good all the time. But then you can't stop. But then you can't stop taking it. Because then what? You don't feel good. And guess what? An addict doesn't do well with that. Why not? Because you're comfortable all the time. You are comfortable all the time, right? If that's what you're used to, that's what your brain is used to, that's what your body's used to, you cannot grow from that, right? You grow through struggle, right? We talked about that in the last video. Growth through struggle. The only way you're going to get better, stronger, more perseverance, the ability to overcome, the ability to achieve, the only way you're going to develop those things in your life is to put yourself into the fire. Accept the fire. Is it going to hurt? You are fucking A right, it's going to hurt. Damn right. Damn right. And you know what? You did that to yourself. I did that to myself by using something like KRATOM every day, morning, afternoon, night, then waking up the next day, morning, noon, night, Then on Wednesday, morning, noon, night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so forth and so on. When are you not taking it, bro? When are you not taking it, ma'am? You're always taking it. So you're never giving yourself a chance to be thrown into the fire, because you are subduing your ability to be able to feel those stresses, to be able to feel those pains, to be able to feel that discomfort that is actually, in turn, going to cause you to grow, right? And so in an effort to break this down, don't do what makes you happy right now. Do now what will make you happy later, all right? Because think about it. If I always do what makes me happy right at this moment, you know, what will make me happy? Let me think. Damn, a piece of cake sounds real good, you know? Damn, taking some Kratom, you know, that sounds good. Sitting on the couch and, you know, scrolling through my phone, damn, that's, you know, that's something that won't really take me out of my comfort zone. You know, that'll allow me to kind of be in my own little shell of comfort, and just, you know, and nobody from the outside world is going to come in and hurt me if I'm doing those things. But what does that do for your future? Right? These little micro choices and these micro decisions that you are or are not making on a daily basis, whether you're making them by omission, which means you're completely ignoring the positive choices that you should make, or by admission, where you're actually purposely making bad decisions. It can be either one. You can be ignoring good decisions that you should be making, or you can be purposely making bad micro decisions. These little micro decisions that you make from second to second, moment to moment, hour to hour, week to week, are going to affect your level of mental health in the long run. Does that make sense? So you have to have the opposite of a victim mentality, and you have to have a mentality of accountability. Okay? And, you know, for daily life, happy right now is just not a good plan. It'll make you soft. It'll make you weak. You have to do what challenges you, what pushes you. Because we talked about this last time too. Whatever challenges you mentally or physically is going to what? Make you stronger on the other side. Being comfortable does not make you stronger. No one has ever grown and become better by being uncomfortable in life, right? An hour lost today is an hour lost forever. I want you to think about that. An hour lost today is an hour lost forever. Okay? I don't know if any of you guys out there have ever heard of David Goggins. You've heard me mention him on the channel. I suggest you look him up. Now, David Goggins was not a drug addict, but he is a person who people call him possibly the hardest man on earth. And if you have not either read his book or listened to his story, it is absolutely 1,000,000% relevant to the psyche, the life of a drug addict, okay? Because this guy has done more ultramarathon runs than probably anybody in history, and I'm talking about 100-mile runs. He has gone through, I think, 3 Hell Weeks, which is one of the hardest military trainings. He's been an Army Ranger. He's been through Hell Weeks. He's been through Buds, you know, multiple times. This guy's a Navy SEAL. I mean, just one of the most decorated, you know, military. I think he was a chief in the military, but just his military career is just one of the most decorated of anybody. He also owns the world record for the most pull-ups, I think in like 17 hours or something crazy like that. The guy did like thousands of pull-ups, in a certain amount of hours. And I don't remember exactly what that was, but he holds the world record for it. You know, I mean, the guy talks about throwing his shoulder out of joint and, you know, having all kinds of health problems just trying to break this record. He is one of the hardest individuals on the planet. And his main slogan is actually "Stay Hard." When you hear "Stay Hard," that's David Goggins. You know, he's the one that kind of coined that phrase, right? Go and listen sometime to this guy and his childhood experience. This guy grew up in a home where his father was abusive. He owned nightclubs, bars. His father was never around. And then when he was, he would beat on him and his brother. He would physically abuse his mother, was an alcoholic, cheated on his mom all the time, was involved in prostitution. Just this guy grew up in a household that was better suited for snakes than for a human, than for a child, right? And he talks about when he was young, you know, this kid would work in his father's skating ring. His father owned businesses, but he was just a horrible man, right? And a very abusive individual. And instead of going to school, David Goggins would be working until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, helping to close up the skating ring, his father's skating ring, right? And then he would go home. There was no time to do homework, none of that. And so he just wasn't even going to school for a lot of the time. And then when he did, he was flunking out. And he talks about how he could barely read and write when he was a child. He had a stuttering problem. He was one of the most insecure, scared individuals that you could ever imagine in this world. And he talks about his journey of when he got to be a teenager and stuff like that. He just, you know, couldn't find what he wanted to be. All he knew how to do was just act a fool at school and stuff like that so he could try to impress people, because this guy just didn't know who he was, right? And he talks about ballooning up to a 300-pound man by the time he was in his, I think it was his late teens or early 20s. And at some point, this guy looked in the mirror and just got sick of, you know, who he was. Just got sick of looking at himself in the mirror, because everything that he was and everything that he was about was a lie. So he decided to go into the military, and he made a big effort at it. I think he lost like 100 pounds within just maybe I think it was like a month or a couple of months to actually make his first level of entrance into the military. And this guy now, coming from that sort of background, is now is labeled the hardest man alive, the toughest man alive. And he outlines the journey that brought him there. And when you look at, you know, the dissimilarities between him as a young man, him as a child, and who he is now, you're like, wait, what? How did you go from point A to B where you are now? You know, and he talks about how it wasn't a straight line, but he attributes these amazing physical pursuits that he has endured that has caused him to be the confident, well-spoken, a guy who, you know, has a book that's, you know, a bestseller book. He attributes every bit of that to his very, very grueling physical pursuits, because physical pursuits like that strips away everything else. It strips away social status. It doesn't matter if you're cool, if you're not cool, if you got millions, or if you got $10 in the bank. You get 50 miles into a 100-mile run, the truth shows, brother. The truth shows. And that man that's worth millions is going to fall out just as quick as the person that's got $10 in their account. You see what I mean? So there's something pure about it. And there's something that allows you to learn about yourself with it. And that's why I drill this all the time. That's why I post these videos of me grinding it out on Saturday. Because when I do these sort of things, it gives me strength It gives me strength to meet the next challenge that comes up in my life. You guys have to understand this. You have to understand this. Develop humility and recognize that you don't have control in your life unless you go all in and you throw yourself into the fire of responsibility. Accept more responsibility. Take the pain, throw it on your shoulders, keep moving when you think that you can't keep moving. And I guarantee you what's going to happen is you're going to become stronger and more resilient on the other side of that. I promise. Try it. All right? It's a true story. I love you guys. I really appreciate all the support. Let's go to 400. Let's get it. Let's go. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Stay safe out there and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, comment down below. Peace.